foil screen protector that gives you a nice matte finish to draw on. So your pencil, your Smart Apple Pencil, or I guess it's called a Magic Pencil, is able to draw almost as if it was working on paper in real life. I really enjoy this because prior to this tutorial, I had the glossy finished screen protector, and it was very challenging to get these really nice clean lines, and the sensor almost seemed to want to slide all around and not be as controlled. I strongly suggest purchasing a nice clean screen protector to be able to do some of these things if you want to continue to use Morpholio Trace, or if you wanted to use Photoshop on your iPad. Additionally, we've showed a new color, we've showed how that layers in, and I showed it as multiply. Why don't we see what happens if I changed it back to normal and see how that affects. Actually, hold on, we'll do that in 1 second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in using my 2 fingers, and I'm going to move it to the side so we can really see this. So now I'm going to go back over here, zoom in, I'm going to double click on this, single click on this, and then change it to normal. Let's watch this region right here to see what happens. Do you see how I lost a lot of that deep linear line from the previous layer of the gray? And you see how it's almost washed out? That is because the opacity of the paper is reading like tracing paper. And so we lose that fun overlay that happens with multiply. While we're here, maybe we should look at what happens with darken, color blur, linear, and darken color. I haven't actually tried these yet, so this will be a learning experience for me. Darken seems to pull some of the darker lines while neutralizing the layer that you're currently working on, which I think is interesting. Let's remind ourselves what multiply does. Multiply brings the two together. Color burn. Color burn almost erases. That's very interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, but if you do some really fun graphics, maybe that could be interesting. Linear burn. It's almost like it's added a deeper shadow for some reason. I don't know how I feel about that one either. But I suppose you could use this in a bunch of different ways to layer in some fun plant leaves. I don't know if you can see over here, but there are some interesting layers right here because this is a variegated plant that maybe we could have achieved through this option. And let's look at darker color. Interesting. It doesn't really seem to darken any of the colors. So let's go back to multiply. Now that we've looked at those, and now look, we can change our paper opacity. I wonder what that does. It doesn't really do much when you're in multiply, but let's say if we were back into darken. What does the paper opacity do there? So this is the drawing opacity. That's changing how intense that color is showing up. And the paper opacity, it's very subtle. I don't even think you can see it on your end. Maybe it has something to do with if maybe I had black. Oh wow, look at that. That's with a black pen paper. Anyways, we're going to go back to normal, and we're going to go back to paper opacity at that. Since we discussed layering, it should be also helpful to talk about adjusting your layers. I'm going to zoom back out and make sure that this is horizontally straight, like so. You can see that the layers are now overlapping in fun ways. This is fine. The original rectangle that you drew on is what is going to show up in your PDF. So this background layer right here is the one that I had been drawing on originally. And so when I create a PDF, this will be centered originally as it is in the frame that's in the background. When we talk about layers, there's always the thought process of being able to move them around. And so if I wanted to move this layer below this other layer, do you see how that changed that coloring? And the reason why it changed that coloring is because I don't have this layer, the first layer that we drew, the gray one, on multiply. So let's change that to multiply. And now we're starting to get our green back again. Additionally, you can hide layers by pressing the I button. So clicking that takes him to go away, and now he's back. I'm going to put this layer back down below, and I might hide the green for now. So we've discussed putting on color. We've discussed how to make layers visible, invisible, how to move them from being on top and bottom. Remember, we can never move this layer. Additionally, we have discussed colors, but maybe let's look at the color wheel. You can actually customize your own colors. They have some preset options that you can scroll through. They usually have to do with a lot of architectural exterior colors that get used a lot. Though I don't know how purple gets used often, but to each his own. I like to go to the color wheel, and I'm going to look right over here at my little plant, and I'm going to pick maybe a little bit of a darker green. And you know what? I'm going to make it a little bit more saturated, a little less grayed out. Maybe I move it a little bit more there. So it's a lot bolder than where it was originally. Now that I have that color selected, I might increase my size, and I'm going to decrease my opacity. So now I have this really deep green going on here, more solid, I guess you could say. And so I'm just going to throw in a little bit of a layer like that. That might be too heavy. Let's take that away. Let's lower the opacity even more. Now I'm almost just brushing this on. Very nice. And so I'm going to move on to my other one, which, see, it has a darker part right here. So I'm going to darken this part here. It's interesting because this feels a little bit more gray. I might actually go back to one of the pre-made greens and take this one and throw him on. Get some really fun vibrancy. Some of you guys might know that I'm a little bit more subtle with my color choices than other people might be. They might be a little bit bolder with how they layer their tones and get a more graphic version. So there's a couple of roots that might need to be acknowledged. So we'll just throw those in like that. And so let's say we're done. No, maybe not. Let's throw in a little bit of black to add in a little bit more of this value tone here. Get him to be fun shaped. A little bit of an accent of shadow build up here. Right? And so now we have a bottle of some sort, right? So we've just added a little bit of extra dimension. And so we're just going to ground him by giving him a little bit of a shadow. And we're done. So now we have our little bottle with a vase. To save our project, it auto-saves onto your iPad. It does not save under your account. It saves on your iPad. But if we wanted to save as a PDF, we would go to the Export button at the top here. And I'm going to save it as a PDF. And I'm going to choose the best option. And you say, OK, continue. So now I have a vase. And I am going to, it's not quite saved yet as a PDF. So now I'm going to officially export it. And I am going to save it to my personal Dropbox. You might save directly to your iPad. You might have a Google Drive set up on your iPad. You might have a Microsoft shared drive on your iPad. Whatever works to save your file. I have a file specifically for Moira, so I'm going to save here, and it has been added to Dropbox. It's very exciting. So now that sums up a brief tutorial, and we will dive in the next video on how to do trees and from a frontal view and trees from a bird's eye view. Okay?